The end of the world. I am fascinated by the study of biblical prophecies. They truly captivate me. That's why I get very excited whenever I see the topic of the apocalypse featured in various headlines. To me, these topics are opportunities to witness what I believe regarding the end times. In fact, a recent survey conducted by Lifeway, a non-denominational organization in the United States, revealed that most evangelicals wish their pastors would preach more about the apocalypse and the end of the world, and they feel the lack of these topics. This, in fact, is a wake-up call to those preachers who only talk about self-help, forgetting the essential truths of the faith. That's where the study of Revelation comes in, a book that, if deeply studied, will bring great spiritual revival to your church. Let me explain to you what that strange word apocalypse means. It's easy, you'll see. In Greek, the word kalypto means shadow, okay? Shadow. The word EU means good, so eucalypto means good shadow. Easy, right? Now, the prefix apo is a preposition that can mean out of, away from, or removed from. For example, apostle, one who is sent to preach outwards, to preach far away. Apostasy, someone who departs from the midst of God's people, and so on. Therefore, when I join the word apo, out of, with kalypto, shadow, you get the term apocalypto or apocalypse, meaning out of the shadow, away from the shadow. So, what is outside or far from the shadow is in the light. It is revealed. That's why apocalypse means revelation. Cool, right? It is the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants things which must soon take place. But the fact that it's a revelation from God does not prevent sincere Christians from having different opinions about this book, which is why I want to start by quoting a phrase from St. Augustine that, for me, is a guiding principle. St. Augustine said that in essentials, we must have unity, in non-essentials, diversity or freedom, but in everything, charity or love, especially for those who think differently from us. That's why, with much respect, I believe I might shock some evangelical brothers who follow me on social media. So, are you ready for the shock? Here it goes. I do not believe in the rapture of the church. There. But how? Has Rodrigo Silva lost his faith? No, not at all. And you might be surprised to learn that I'm not alone in this. A study by the Plur Forum on Religion and Public Life interviewed 2,200 evangelical leaders from 190 different countries and found that 32% of them also do not believe there will be a secret rapture of the church at the end of time. When a very similar survey was done with theologians, this time American theologians, the number of those who denied or seriously doubted the rapture was around 60%. Just to provide context for those who may not know what I'm talking about. A large portion of today's evangelical Christians, especially Pentecostals and Neo-Pentecostals, believe that Christ's second coming will have two phases. The first is when he comes secretly to rapture to heaven the living and dead believers, as found in 1 Thessalonians 4 verses 13 to 17. In this understanding, a multitude of people will disappear in an instant. That's why on some cars you might see bumper stickers saying, "Caution, in case of rapture, this car will be unmanned." It's a humorous way to preach what they believe. So, continuing, due to this supposed disappearance of the church, rapture by Christ, there would be 7 years of tribulation on earth, ruled by the Antichrist, who would persecute Israel. At that moment, the Jews are expected to convert to Jesus. Only after that would Christ return, this time in glory and majesty, accompanied by those previously raptured, to reign for 1,000 years on earth. This is more or less what is taught by dispensationalism or the doctrine of a secret rapture. However, what many may not know is that, despite the fascination this view holds for many believers, it is not a doctrine clearly found in the Holy Bible. And even if you say, yes it is, it's in the Bible, you must admit that from the time the Apostle John wrote Revelation until the year 1830, no one ever talked about it. In other words, we had 1,800 years of Christianity without anyone ever hearing about the secret rapture. The first to preach, it was John Nelson Darby, an Anglo-Irish preacher. And do you know where he got his inspiration? From the writings of a Spanish Jesuit named Francisco Ribera, who projected the prophecy of the Antichrist into the distant future in order to combat the Protestant understanding at the time, which saw Revelation 13 being fulfilled in the papal power of Europe. This is a matter of history. I'm not making it up. You can check the sources. The great reformers, people like Luther, Calvin, Zwingli, the Moravian Brethren, Wesley, none of them believed in the secret rapture of the church. On the contrary, they all spoke only of a single and clear return of Jesus that will happen in one stage and be visible and glorious worldwide, not a pre-tribulation rapture. Only in the early 20th century did this view of the end become popular through the so-called Scofield Study Bible and other evangelists. Now, it's strange that such a complex, well-structured doctrine, supposedly biblical, would be so absent from the history of Christianity. It's strange that no servant of God noticed it for 2,000 years of church history. One time, a deeply devoted evangelical pastor, whom I deeply respect, told me, "But Rodrigo, God has to remove his people from the earth before the Great Tribulation." Sacred history teaches that in every age of divine judgment on civilizations, God always spared his faithful. He saved Noah from the flood, Lot from the destruction of Sodom, Israel from the 10 plagues of Egypt, and promised to protect his church during the hour of trial that will come upon the whole world. He then quoted Revelation 3 verse 10, which says, "I will keep you from the hour of trial." But wait a minute. I told him, "Pastor, to keep means to protect, not to remove from one place to another. In none of the texts you quoted did God rapture his people to spare them from judgment. On the contrary, he protected them, but did not remove them. Jesus himself prayed to the Father, "I do not ask you to take them out of the world, but to protect them from the evil one." See, Noah was protected inside the ark, but remained in the midst of the flood. Lot was pulled out by angels, but he ran amid falling fire. He was not secretly raptured. The Hebrews, of course, were spared from the plagues in Egypt, but remained in Pharaoh's land while the plagues rained down. With great respect for those who think differently, I say that I do not see in the Holy Bible any passage that clearly teaches the return of Jesus in 2 stages, one secret, the other visible. But I know someone will still say, "Rodrigo, Paul made it very clear in Thessalonians that we will be caught up to meet the Lord in the clouds, and to be caught up is to be taken suddenly, without anyone seeing." Well, check the dictionary and you'll see that caught up has no connotation of a secret act, neither in Portuguese nor in Greek, which is the original language of the New Testament. In fact, the word harpazo, to catch up, can be translated as to seize or to snatch, as in Matthew 12 verse 29, and you'll see that it clearly means something visible, since Jesus says in that passage that no one can plunder the strong man's house unless he first binds him. If it were secret, the strong man wouldn't even notice. I know the strong man in that Bible text represents the enemy of God, and as a spiritual being, he must be bound for the church to be saved or caught up, but this doesn't invalidate the etymological argument that the original word does not clearly imply a hidden, secret action. In fact, if you pay attention, all the texts usually interpreted as referring to the secret rapture of the church have, in their context, a larger framework of an unexpected but glorious and visible coming witnessed by the whole world, even the ungodly. Of course, due to time, I can't analyze every passage, but I'll just mention one. Matthew 24 verses 40 to 41. It says, "Is this the secret rapture?" I don't think so, for 2 reasons. First, this passage follows verses 30 and 31, which speak of the worldwide visibility of Christ's return. So, it's after the glorious coming that those verses take place. Secondly, the comparison Jesus makes right before is with the flood. That's an important detail to understand this passage. You can see it in your Bible. He says then concludes, in other words, textual analysis shows us that those who are left are the ones who are saved, and those who are taken are the ones who are lost. Read it calmly in your Bible, and you'll see that's exactly what it says. And Revelation is the certainty that we both have of that.